You are standing in your kitchen holding your phone, staring at a text you have read 14 times, and somewhere underneath the hurt is a question you have never said out loud, even to yourself. Do they know what they did to me? Not do they remember? Do they know? There is a difference, and that difference has been keeping you up at night for longer than you want to admit. You have watched them move on, post smiling photos, start dating someone new within weeks, laugh at a party like nothing happened, and some quiet, exhausted part of you has started to wonder if you imagined the whole thing, if you were the problem, if they really did feel nothing at all. Here is the antagonist in this story, and I want to name it clearly so you stop mistaking it for a person you loved. It is not your ex. It is not your parent, your boss, or your so-called friend. The antagonist is a nervous system pattern called narcissistic defense, and it lives inside certain people the way a virus lives inside a cell, quietly rewriting behavior to protect one single thing: a fragile, hollow sense of self that cannot survive contact with its own flaws. You are not dealing with a villain twirling a mustache. You were dealing with a person whose entire identity would collapse if they let themselves feel, for even 1 second, what they did to you. That is not a compliment to them. It is the key to understanding everything that happened and everything you are about to learn how to release. Stay with me for the next few minutes because by the end of this, you are going to know exactly how to read the 3 physical signs that prove this person felt the impact of what they did, even while their mouth said nothing. You are going to understand why your body has been aching for a confession that was never designed to come. And you are going to walk away from this video lighter than you have felt in months, because the thing you have been searching for was never in their hands to give you. It was always in yours. Let's start with what empaths are actually built for, because this is where most people get the whole dynamic backwards. You did not fall for a narcissist because you were naive or broken or desperate for love. You connected with them because your nervous system is wired for something called high emotional resonance, which just means your brain and body pick up on other people's internal states almost automatically, the same way a tuning fork starts vibrating when another tuning fork rings nearby. When you were near them, you felt their tension before they said a word. You sensed their sadness under the bravado. You picked up the flicker of something soft in their eyes during quiet moments, and that flicker felt like proof there was a real person in there worth loving. You were not wrong about what you felt. You were only wrong about what it meant. Here is where it gets uncomfortable, so lean in. That soft flicker you kept catching, the one that made you stay through the coldness and the cruelty, that flicker was real. It was shame, not sadness, not love, not remorse, the way you understand remorse. Shame. And once you understand what shame actually does inside a person like this, you will never again mistake their silence for proof that you didn't matter. Before we go further, I want to name something else, because this pattern does not only show up in ex-partners. It shows up in parents who could never say sorry for years of criticism dressed up as love. It shows up in bosses who take credit for your work and go cold the moment you mention it. It shows up in friends who can be warm for months and then vanish into silence the instant you ask them to be accountable for something small. The relationship changes, but the mechanism underneath it does not. Once you learn to recognize this pattern in one person, you will start recognizing it everywhere, and that recognition is going to save you years of confusion in relationships you haven't even entered yet. Let's break down the difference between guilt and shame, because this single distinction will change how you see every toxic interaction you have ever survived. Guilt says, I did a bad thing. Shame says, I am a bad thing. Guilt lets a person separate their actions from their identity, which means they can look at what they did, feel bad about it, and still believe they are fundamentally okay underneath. That is why emotionally healthy people can apologize. Saying I was wrong doesn't threaten who they are, it just means they made a mistake and now they get to fix it. But someone with a narcissistic defense pattern never learned how to access guilt. Their whole identity was built on a shaky platform of being impressive, being right, being in control, And that platform has no room for the sentence, "I hurt someone I claim to love." So when they do hurt you, their brain doesn't process it as a mistake. It processes it as an attack on their entire sense of self, and that triggers shame, the deepest, most unbearable emotion a human nervous system can generate. Picture it like this. Imagine identity as a house. For someone with healthy guilt, that house has many rooms, and one room can have a leak without the whole structure being in danger. They can say, "This room needs repair," and the house still stands. For someone trapped in narcissistic defense, the house has exactly one room, and it is made of glass. Any acknowledgement of wrongdoing doesn't create a small leak. It threatens to shatter the entire structure at once. So the mind does the only thing it knows how to do to survive. It slams every door, seals every window, and refuses to let the truth anywhere near the glass. This is the part they hope you never learn, so pay close attention. That slamming, that sealing, that sudden ice-cold detachment you experienced right after you confronted them, that was not indifference. That was panic wearing a mask of calm. You felt the temperature in the room drop and thought, they truly don't care. What was actually happening, on a nervous system level, was closer to a smoke alarm going off inside their body, and the only response their system had ever built was to shut down, go blank, and walk away before the fire could be seen. There is a reason your body picked up on that flicker so easily, and it has to do with something called mirror neurons, which are simply brain cells that fire both when you do something and when you watch someone else do it. They are part of why you wince when someone else stubs their toe or tear up during a stranger's wedding speech. In empaths, this mirroring system runs at a higher volume than average, which means when you sat across from someone in narcissistic defense, some part of your brain was firing in sync with theirs, catching flashes of their internal state, even while their face stayed composed. You were not imagining a connection that wasn't there. You were reading real data through a system most people don't even know they have. The problem was never your sensitivity. The problem was that you were reading someone who had no idea how to respond honestly to what you found. Remember, I told you there were 3 physical signs. Here is the first one. And once you see it, you will never unsee it again in any relationship for the rest of your life. Watch what happens to their eyes and their breathing in the 3 to 5 seconds right after you name something true about how they hurt you. Not the 10 minutes after, when they've had time to build a counterattack. The 3 to 5 seconds right after. In that tiny window before the mask reassembles, you will often catch a subtle break in eye contact, a small held breath, or a stillness that doesn't match the situation. That micro pause is not nothing. That is the body registering impact before the defense system catches up and buries it. You caught that flicker 100 times and called it hope. I am telling you today, it was evidence. I promised you a story, and I want to tell you about a woman I will call Dana, not her real name, because her story is the story of almost every empath who has ever survived this dynamic. Dana spent 3 years with a man who could make an entire room feel warmer just by walking into it, and who could make her feel like the only person alive during the good months. When things were good, they were extraordinary. When things turned, they turned instantly, and what followed wasn't rage most of the time. It was silence. Cold, blank, unreachable silence that could last for days. Dana used to sit outside his apartment door after fights, not saying anything, just needing to know he wasn't completely gone. And every single time, in that silence, she felt something under the ice, a tightness in his jaw, a refusal to fully meet her eyes, a stiffness in his shoulders that didn't match a person who supposedly felt nothing. She used to think, if I just wait long enough, he will finally say it. He will finally tell me he knows he hurt me. That moment never came, not once, in 3 years. And she spent the 2 years after the relationship ended still waiting for a version of that moment that was never coming, replaying the silence, searching it for meaning it was never going to hand over in words. Here is the open loop I want you to hold on to because I am going to close it later, and when I do, it is going to change how you see every unanswered text message you have ever stared at. What Dana was sensing under that ice was real. But the reason he could never say it out loud has almost nothing to do with her, and almost everything to do with a mechanism most people never learn about until it is too late to save the relationship. I will show you exactly what that mechanism is and exactly why it made an apology functionally impossible for him, not later in some vague way, but in detail before this video ends. There is something else worth understanding here, something that will change how you feel about the years you spent trying to reach them. The nervous system does not distinguish clearly between a threat to your body and a threat to your identity. Both can trigger the same fight, flight, or freeze response. So when you named a truth that threatened their identity, their body reacted the way anyone's body reacts to real danger: a spike in heart rate, a flood of stress hormones, an overwhelming pull toward escape or defense. This is why the reaction so often felt disproportionate to what you actually said. You were not talking to someone calmly weighing your words. You were talking to a nervous system that had already sounded the alarm before a single sentence of yours was finished. Let's talk about the second sign your body has been trained to overlook, because it hides in plain sight inside their anger. When someone with this pattern is confronted, the response is almost never a calm denial. It's disproportionate. You bring up one specific thing they did last Tuesday, and suddenly they're listing every mistake you've made since college. This isn't random cruelty. It's a predictable defense called projection, which simply means taking an unbearable feeling inside yourself and throwing it onto someone else so you don't have to hold it anymore. If I can make this argument about your flaws, I never have to sit with mine. The size of their counterattack is not proof of your wrongdoing. It is a direct measurement of how much shame just got triggered inside them. The bigger the explosion, the deeper the hit landed. Think of shame in their body like pressure building inside a sealed container that was never built with a release valve. When you name the truth, pressure spikes instantly. Since the container cannot open safely, it has exactly two options: blow outward as rage aimed at you, or seal itself shut through silence and walking away. Both responses look like strength from the outside. Both responses are actually a system in crisis, doing whatever it takes to avoid rupturing from the inside. This is exactly what happened to Dana the first time she confronted him about missing her birthday to see someone else. She asked one quiet question: "Are you even sorry?" And within 30 seconds he was listing every time she had supposedly let him down over the previous 6 months, most of which she had never even known bothered him until that moment. At the time, she thought she had opened some kind of floodgate of legitimate grievances he had been holding in. Looking back with what she knows now, she recognizes it for what it actually was: a container under pressure, finding the fastest possible exit. Here is the third sign, and this one is sneaky because it doesn't look like a reaction to you at all. It looks like memory. Listen to how the story of what happened between you slowly changes over weeks and months. Details go missing. Your reaction to their behavior becomes, in the retelling, the actual starting point of the conflict, as if you started it by being hurt. This is not simply lying to you. It is something stranger and in some ways sadder, a real-time rewriting of memory designed to protect them from their own shame. So thorough that by the time they finish telling the new version, they may genuinely believe it. You are not losing your mind when the story keeps shifting under your feet. You are watching a nervous system in the act of self-protection, choosing a version of reality it can survive believing. By the 6th month of their relationship, Dana genuinely could not remember certain conflicts the way she had lived them. She would bring up a night that had left her in tears, and he would describe it so differently, so calmly, with such specific and confident details, that she started apologizing for things she wasn't even sure she had done. This is one of the most disorienting parts of loving someone in narcissistic defense: watching your own memory become a battleground, doubting events you experienced in your own body because someone else told the story with more certainty than you felt entitled to. If this has happened to you, I want you to hear something clearly. Confidence is not the same thing as accuracy. A person can sound completely certain while rewriting history to protect themselves from a truth they cannot bear to hold. Now, here is the trap, and I need you to hear this clearly because it is the exact trap that kept Dana stuck for 2 years after the relationship was long over. The trap is waiting, waiting for the eye contact to turn into words, waiting for the shame you can sense to finally become an apology you can hear. As long as you are waiting for that, you have quietly handed them the keys to your healing timeline, and they don't even have to do anything with those keys. They just have to keep existing, keep being silent, keep being far away, and your peace stays on hold indefinitely. Before you understood this, waiting felt like patience, like loyalty, like believing in the good person you once saw. After you understand this, waiting reveals itself as something else entirely, an old survival habit, asking a locked door to open when the person on the other side genuinely cannot turn the handle. I want you to sit with a harder truth now, one most content about narcissists never says out loud, because I think you're ready for it. Expecting a full, healthy apology from someone locked in this pattern is like expecting someone with a broken leg to win a sprint. It is not that they refuse out of spite in most cases. It is that the specific muscle required, the ability to hold "I hurt someone I love" without your entire identity collapsing, was never built. Some people spend years in real therapy, slowly building that muscle for the first time in their 40s or 50s. Most never do the work at all. Either way, that timeline was never yours to carry, and it was never fair that you tried to carry it for as long as you did. Let's go back to Dana, because I promised you I would close this loop, and this is the part that changes everything. 2 years after the relationship ended, Dana ran into someone who had dated the same man after her. In one short conversation, she learned that the silence, the coldness, the refusal to ever say the words "I was wrong," none of that was unique to her. It was the exact same pattern, with a different woman, in a different apartment, on different nights. In that moment, something shifted permanently in Dana's body. The silence had never been a verdict about her worth. It had been the same broken mechanism playing on repeat, regardless of who was standing in front of it. She had spent 2 years trying to earn an apology from a system that was never, under any circumstances, going to produce one for anybody. That is the moment I want for you right now. Except, you don't need someone else's story to hand it to you. You can give it to yourself today. The silence you have been decoding for meaning was never a message about you. It was the sound of a fragile identity protecting itself from collapse, the same sound it would make in front of anyone standing where you stood. Their inability to say "I hurt you and I'm sorry" is not a locked door with your name on it. It is a door that has never opened for anyone, and it never will, until they choose to do the deep, uncomfortable work of building a new kind of house, one with more than a single room made of glass. I also want to address something that quietly eats away at empaths long after the relationship ends, a specific kind of tiredness that has nothing to do with sadness. If you have spent months or years scanning someone else's face for hidden truth, monitoring their tone for warning signs, adjusting your own words in real time to avoid triggering their defenses, your nervous system has essentially been working a second unpaid job around the clock. This is not weakness, and it is not something wrong with you. It is the cumulative cost of running your extraordinary sensing ability on high alert for far longer than any body was designed to sustain. That heaviness you have been carrying, the one that makes ordinary tasks feel harder than they should, is not proof that you are broken. It is proof of how much invisible labor you were doing just to survive being close to someone who could not tell you the truth about what you were sensing. Healing from this does not require you to stop being sensitive. It requires you to redirect where that sensitivity gets spent. Instead of scanning someone else's face for signs of hidden regret, you can start scanning your own body for signs of tension, tightness, or unease. and treat those signals with the same seriousness you once gave to theirs. Instead of interpreting their silence for hours, you can notice the urge to interpret, name it gently as an old habit, and choose to redirect your attention towards something that actually nourishes you. A walk, a phone call with someone who tells you the truth, 5 minutes of simply breathing without analyzing anyone at all. So, what do you actually do with all of this, now that you can see behind the mask? You stop performing detective work on someone else's nervous system and you start protecting your own. Every time you catch yourself analyzing their latest text for hidden regret or checking their social media for a crack in the armor, gently interrupt that pattern and ask yourself one question instead. What does my own body need right now to feel safe? Your empathy was never the flaw here. Your empathy is precisely why you could sense a truth most people would have missed entirely. The mistake was pointing that extraordinary sensing ability outward toward decoding them instead of inward toward taking care of yourself. Before you understood any of this, you were an empath sitting outside a locked door, certain that if you just felt hard enough, sensed clearly enough, loved patiently enough, the door would eventually open and hand you the truth you deserved. After this, you are something different. You are someone who can read the micropause, name the projection, notice the rewritten story, and instead of waiting for permission to feel complete, you simply turn around, walk back into your own life, and close the door softly behind you, not out of anger, but out of respect for your own time. I want to give you one practical tool before we close, something you can use the very next time you feel the old pull to decode someone's silence for meaning. Call it the mirror check. When you catch yourself staring at a screen, replaying a conversation, or searching for hidden regret in someone's behavior, pause and ask yourself a single question. Whose nervous system am I trying to manage right now? Theirs or mine? In almost every case, you will find you have quietly slipped into managing theirs, trying to soothe a shame response that was never yours to carry, trying to earn a resolution from a person who structurally cannot provide one. The moment you notice that slip, gently bring your attention back to your own body. Unclench your jaw, drop your shoulders, take one slow breath. That single redirection, repeated enough times, is what actually rewires the old pattern, far more effectively than any amount of analyzing them ever could. Here is your identity upgrade, and I want you to actually let it land instead of skimming past it. You are not someone who was too much, too sensitive, too needy, too anything. You are someone whose nervous system is so finely tuned it could detect a hidden truth that person spent their entire life hiding from even themselves. That is not a weakness you need to manage down. That is a rare, powerful form of perception, and once you stop wasting it on people who cannot receive it, you will start noticing it work in your favor everywhere else in your life, in the friendships that actually deserve you, in the decisions that used to confuse you, in the quiet certainty of knowing when something is true. There is one more thing I have not told you yet. Something about what happens inside an empath's own body after years of sensing this pattern without understanding it. A kind of quiet exhaustion that most people mistake for depression or burnout, when it is actually something far more specific and far more fixable. That is exactly where we are going next, and once you see it, you are going to understand a part of yourself that has been confusing you for years.